Chelsea wanted him for $60 million in 2022, and now he could cost them $100 million. This is the Anthony Gordon story nobody wants to talk about. Here's a question that should make every Chelsea fan stop and think for a moment. What happens when you chase a player, the player wants you back, the deal almost happens, and then it falls apart at the last minute? What does that cost you in the long run? Not just emotionally, but in cold hard money, because Chelsea are living that answer right now. In the summer of 2022, Chelsea were ready to pay £60 million for a young winger named Anthony Gordon. He was desperate to come. Tuchel wanted him badly, and it did not happen. Fast forward to today, the summer of 2025, and Chelsea still want Anthony Gordon. Except now Newcastle United are asking for up to £100 million for the same player. That is the story. That is what missing out truly costs you in modern football. And the more you dig into it, the more fascinating and painful this whole situation becomes. So let us sit down, go through every detail, and really understand what is happening here and why every Chelsea fan should be paying close attention. Let us go back to the beginning, because 2022 is where this all started. To really understand where we are today, you have to go back to the summer of 2022. Chelsea had just gone through a major ownership change. New money had come in. The ambition was sky high. They wanted to rebuild, and they wanted to do it fast. Thomas Tuchel was the manager at the time, and he had a very clear idea of the players he wanted to bring to Stamford Bridge. One of those players was Anthony Gordon. At the time, Gordon was 21 years old and playing for Everton. He had grown up in Liverpool, come through the Everton Academy, and had started to establish himself as one of the most exciting young English wingers around. He was direct, energetic, creative, and had a clear love for the game that showed every time he stepped on the pitch. Chelsea were serious about him, not just interested in a vague way, seriously, genuinely, actively pursuing him. Sky Sports reported at the time that Chelsea were pressing ahead with their attempt to sign Gordon, and that Thomas Tuchel had personally identified him as one of his top targets that summer. The fee Chelsea were willing to pay was up to £60 million. They submitted 2 separate bids, trying to get the deal done. Now think about that for a second. 2 bids. They did not just make one offer and walk away when it was rejected. They came back. They pushed. They really wanted this player. Everton's position was very clear, though. They said Gordon was not for sale. Frank Lampard, who was Everton's manager at the time, confirmed publicly that he wanted the player to stay. Gordon was seen as too important to the club, especially as Everton were starting a difficult Premier League season and needed their best attacking players available. The club held firm, and Chelsea could not get the deal done, so Gordon stayed at Everton, at least for a few more months. What Gordon actually said about wanting Chelsea now here is the part of this story that really stings when you hear it. It is not just that Chelsea wanted Gordon. Gordon wanted Chelsea too. He has spoken openly about this. After the failed move, Gordon admitted publicly that the transfer was quite close to happening. He said he was desperate to go at the time and that he specifically wanted to work with Thomas Tuchel. He explained that he felt his style of play would suit the way Tuchel had Chelsea playing, and described it as a big opportunity that ultimately did not happen. Read those words carefully. He was desperate to go. He did not say he was open to it or that he was considering it. He said desperate. That is a strong word. That is a player who had his mind made up and was ready to take that step. And the reason he wanted to go was not just about money or moving to a bigger club. It was personal. He believed in what Tuchel was building at Chelsea. He believed his game would fit the system. He was excited by the football they were playing. This was not a player chasing a pay rise. This was a player who genuinely believed Chelsea was the right move for his career at that specific moment. That makes the failure to sign him even harder to understand. When both the club and the player are aligned and the deal still does not happen, something has gone seriously wrong in the process, and Chelsea paid the price for that. Gordon went to Newcastle, and then everything changed. After staying at Everton through the end of 2022, Anthony Gordon eventually left in January 2023, but he did not go to Chelsea. He went to Newcastle United. The fee was around £45 million initially, with the total potentially rising to around €45.6 million in the end. Now, at the time, some people probably looked at that move and thought it was a sideways step. Newcastle were a newly wealthy club with ambition but had not yet shown what they were fully capable of. Gordon was going from one club fighting near the bottom of the table to another club that was just starting to build something. Was this really the right move for him? The answer turned out to be yes, absolutely yes. Gordon settled at Newcastle and started to grow into a genuinely elite wide player. He became one of their most important attackers. He contributed goals and assists consistently. He earned his place in the England national team. And season by season, his performances just kept getting better. By 2025, this was not just a good Premier League winger anymore. Reports this year noted that only Kylian Mbappe of Real Madrid and Harry Kane of Bayern Munich had scored more Champions League goals than Gordon in the current season. Let that sink in. An English winger at Newcastle United was being compared to the likes of Mbappe and Kane for Champions League output. That is an elite level of performance. Gordon also played a big role in helping Newcastle win the EFL Cup in 2025, their first major domestic trophy in 70 years. He scored in both legs of the semi-final against Arsenal, which shows you the kind of big game player he has become. So the question is, would any of this have happened if he had gone to Chelsea in 2022? Here is the interesting question. Would Gordon have become this player at Chelsea? This is one of those football questions that is impossible impossible to answer with certainty, but is really worth thinking about. If Chelsea had managed to sign Gordon in 2022, would he have developed the same way? On one hand, you could argue that Chelsea would have given him a bigger platform, better training facilities, more Champions League experience, and exposure to top-level football on a more consistent basis. Those are all things that help young players grow. On the other hand, Chelsea during that period were going through massive changes. Multiple managers came and went, the squad was constantly being shuffled, new players were coming in all the time. It was not exactly the most stable environment for a young player to settle into and develop his game over a period of years. At Newcastle, Gordon got something very valuable. He got consistency. He got a manager in Eddie Howe who trusted him, built around him, and gave him the freedom to grow. He got a team that was growing together. He became a cornerstone of what Newcastle were building rather than just another young talent in a bloated Chelsea squad trying to find his place. There is a real argument that missing out on Chelsea was actually the best thing that could have happened to Anthony Gordon, the footballer, and that makes the story even more complicated for Chelsea fans to process. But here is where it gets really interesting, because Chelsea still want him. This summer 2025, Chelsea are back, and the price has exploded. After everything that happened, after Gordon went to Newcastle, became one of England's best wide players, helped his club win silverware, and established himself as a Champions League level performer, Chelsea have come back around to the idea of signing him. Multiple reliable sources, including iNews, ESPN, and others, confirmed in May 2025 that Arsenal and Chelsea both remain interested in signing Anthony Gordon, with a potential fee of around £80 million being discussed. Newcastle placed a price tag of around €95 million on him as they look to fend off interest in their star player. Other reports have suggested Newcastle's true asking price is even higher. According to some sources throughout 2025 and into early 2026, Newcastle were citing a figure of around £100 million for Gordon. That is the number they want. £100 million for a player Chelsea could have signed 3 years ago for £60 million. Do you understand what that means? Chelsea's hesitation, or their inability to get the deal done in 2022, has potentially cost them an extra £40 million at minimum just to sign the same player, and that is assuming the deal can even be done, because Newcastle are not exactly desperate to sell. Why would Newcastle even consider selling Gordon? This is a fair question. If Gordon is as important as we are saying and as good as the stats suggest, why would Newcastle even think about selling him? The answer comes down to money and rules. Newcastle, despite their wealth and ambition, have to operate within Premier League financial rules around profitability and sustainability, which people often call PSR. These rules are designed to stop clubs from spending more than they earn over a rolling period. Reports from reliable sources suggest that Newcastle could actually face problems with these rules if they do not raise funds by selling a significant asset this summer. And if they are forced to sell someone, Gordon is one of the players who would attract the biggest fee. That is the financial reality of the situation. This does not mean Newcastle want to sell him. It means they might have to consider it if the money offered is right, and if it helps them stay within the rules while reinvesting in the squad. It is a complicated situation, and one that has given clubs like Chelsea and Arsenal hope that a deal might actually be possible this summer. Chelsea versus Arsenal. Who is actually winning this race right now? Here is where things get really interesting for the Chelsea community. Because Chelsea are not the only club chasing Gordon, not even close. Arsenal are very much in this race too, so are Liverpool and Manchester United to varying degrees. But from the latest reports coming out in early 2026, Arsenal have actually moved ahead in this race. According to ESPN and The Sun, Arsenal are currently leading the chase for Gordon. Mikel Arteta at Arsenal is described as a longtime admirer of the player. Arsenal believe a fee of around £75 million could get the deal done, even though Newcastle are asking for significantly more. Arsenal believe Gordon would be happy to move to London. That is a significant detail. If the player himself is open to going to Arsenal, that changes the dynamic completely. It means Chelsea cannot just rely on Gordon wanting them. They have to actually compete properly for his signature. This is starting to feel uncomfortably familiar. Back in 2022, Gordon wanted Chelsea. Now in 2025, Arsenal seem to be the club the player might prefer. Time changes things, opportunities shift, and Chelsea find themselves in a race they might not be leading. So the question for every Chelsea fan reading this is simple. Does the club you support have the desire and the plan to actually win this transfer battle this time? The numbers behind Gordon right now tell a clear story. Let us just look at the raw facts for a moment, because they paint a very clear picture of why this player commands such a huge fee. Gordon has gone from a €45 million signing at Newcastle in early 2023 to a player Newcastle are now valuing at anywhere between £95 and £100 million just 2.5 years later. That is an enormous increase in market value in a very short time, and it is entirely justified by what he has done on the pitch. His Champions League contributions this season alone have been remarkable. Only Mbappe and Kane have scored more Champions League goals than him this season. For an English winger playing at Newcastle, that is a genuinely stunning achievement. It puts him in elite company not just in England but across the whole of European football. He has also won silverware. The EFL Cup win with Newcastle in 2025 was his first major trophy, and he played a significant part in getting them there. Big players step up in big moments, and Gordon has shown he can do exactly that. His contract at Newcastle runs until 2030, which means if Newcastle choose not to sell, Gordon is tied to them for another 5 years. That is a lot of leverage for Newcastle in any negotiation. They can afford to hold out for the right number because there is no urgency from a contract perspective. And yet the interest from top clubs keeps growing. That tells you something important. The people who run Chelsea, Arsenal, and other big clubs are looking at this player and seeing someone who can make a real difference at the highest level. What does losing Gordon in 2022 actually mean for Chelsea today? Let us be really honest about this because it is the heart of what this blog is about. Missing out on Gordon in 2022 did not just cost Chelsea a player they wanted. It cost them 3 years of development, 3 years of growing with a player who could have been built into their system from a younger age. Think about it this way. If Chelsea had signed Gordon in 2022 when he was 21 and paid £60 million, they would now have a 24-year-old winger who had grown through the club, understood the system, and was hitting the peak years of his career. Instead, they are looking at potentially paying £80 to £100 million for the same player who has developed elsewhere. The financial difference is painful, but the footballing difference is arguably even bigger. The best transfers in football history are not just about the fee, they are about the timing. Signing a player at 21 and getting 4 or 5 of his best years is very different from signing the same player at 24 when he is already fully formed, has loyalties elsewhere, and comes with a much bigger price tag. Chelsea got the timing wrong in 2022. Whether that was the fault of the club, the negotiations, Everton's stubbornness, or just bad luck is something fans can debate. But the result is clear. A player who wanted to come to Chelsea, who was perfectly suited for the role, slipped through their hands and is now going to cost them nearly double to sign. The bigger picture. What this teaches us about Chelsea. As a club, there is something important to take away from this Gordon story beyond just the transfer details. It tells us something about how Chelsea operate and what they need to do differently. In modern football, when you identify a target and you know the player wants to come and the fee is within reason, you get the deal done. You do not let it drag. You do not let another club come in and pick up the player at a lower price while you are still negotiating, because that is exactly what happened here. Everton rejected Chelsea's bids, Newcastle came in the January window, got the deal done, and now they have a player worth twice what Chelsea would have paid. This is not an isolated thing either. Chelsea have a history of missing players at the right time and then having to pay more for them later or not getting them at all. It is a pattern that costs the club not just money, but quality and momentum. The good news, if you want to find some, is that Chelsea clearly understand the value of Gordon. They are back in this race. They are still trying to get him. That shows the club has not given up on the idea of bringing him to Stamford Bridge. But wanting a player and actually signing him are two very different things, and right now, Chelsea appear to be behind Arsenal in this race. That should concern every Chelsea fan. So, can Chelsea actually get this done this summer? Honestly, it is complicated. And there are several things that need to go right for Chelsea. First, Newcastle need to actually be willing to sell. The PSR situation gives Chelsea some hope there. If Newcastle need to raise funds, Gordon could be moved, but Newcastle will not accept anything below their asking price just because they need money. They will push for the maximum. Second, Chelsea need to be willing to go to a fee that Newcastle accepts. If that number is £80 million, can Chelsea justify that? If it goes to 90 or even 100 million, is that still a deal Chelsea want to do? These are real questions and there is no easy answer. Third, and perhaps most importantly, the player himself needs to choose Chelsea over other options. Arsenal are pushing hard. Gordon is reportedly open to moving to London, but Arsenal in London and Chelsea in London are two different propositions right now. Arsenal are playing in the Champions League and fighting for the title. Chelsea's position in European competition depends on how they finish this season. If Chelsea are not in the Champions League next season, the Gordon conversation becomes even harder. Top players at that level want to play in the biggest competitions. Asking someone to come and play Europa League football when they could play Champions League football elsewhere is a tough sell at any price. Final thoughts and the honest reality for Chelsea fans. Here is where we land after going through all of this. Anthony Gordon is one of the best wingers in English football right now. The numbers say it. The performances say it. The interest from multiple top clubs says it. He is the real deal. Chelsea had a chance to sign him in 2022 for £60 million. He wanted to come. Tuchel wanted him. And it did not happen. Now, in the summer of 2025 and into 2026, Chelsea are back in the race, but they are facing a much higher price tag, much stronger competition, and a player who has multiple attractive options to choose from. The Gordon story is a reminder of something that every football fan understands but hates to admit. In the transfer market, timing is everything. You miss the right moment and you pay for it. Sometimes with money, sometimes by watching the same player go to a rival, sometimes both. Chelsea now have a choice to make this summer. They can go hard for Gordon, pay what it takes, and finally complete the transfer they should have done 3 years ago. Or they can let it slip again and wonder in 2 more years what might have been. The community around Chelsea analysis, the fans who watch every game, discuss every transfer, and care deeply about this club, deserve to see the right decision made here. Chelsea should not be in this position, but they are, and now they have to deal with it. So here's the question I want to leave you with. If you are a Chelsea fan, what do you actually want the club to do? Do you think they should spend whatever it takes to finally sign Anthony Gordon this summer? Or do you think too much time has passed and the money would be better used on a different target? And here is one more question that is worth sitting with. If Chelsea had signed Gordon in 2022 when they had the chance, would the last 3 seasons have looked different for this club? You know the answer. The real question is whether Chelsea are going to make the same mistake again.